Jackie Stewart. You know, the paddock here at Brands Hatch, not too far from London, is what you might call a mobile gasoline alley. On my right are the transporters that carry the cars, spares and equipment to all of the European Grand Prix events and this 16-race series that makes up the World Championship. On my left are the mobile homes, home away from home if you like, for this travelling circus of Grand Prix folk. These motorhomes provide food, refreshment and rest for the drivers, for the mechanics, the team personnel, for the sponsors and for the press and the media. There's nothing left out. They're luxuriously appointed and very professionally staffed. Now, they go to all of those events. People sometimes live in them to be on site, but there's nothing that anyone is short of. There's television sets inside there to look at the race, and to keep track of practice and qualifying times, there's the Olivetti Longines monitor that gives all of that information to press people that may not want to go out onto the racetrack itself. Now, the transporters, on the other hand, for example, like the Brabham one, for this Shell British Grand Prix, would carry no less than 5 Grand Prix cars, 12 BMW engines, 10 gearboxes, and 20 sets. That's 20 sets, 4 to a set of racing tyres and wheels. These vehicles travel thousands of miles in Europe during the year from one Grand Prix site to another. The trucks themselves are manned by only 2 people, 2 professional drivers that take them around. But they're more than just transporters of equipment, cars and tyres. They're also mobile workshops with incredible facilities built in. They've got lathes, they've got welding devices, they've just got about everything that might be needed to rebuild a car in times of trouble. So this paddock area here at Brands Hatch is certainly not short of any equipment at all. Next, we'll be going out on the circuit. We'll be right back after this message. This pre-race report has been brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. In the garage area or in these great transporters, the crunch is here in pit lane, because the sort of work that has to be done here is vital. The cars are going to come in for tyre and wheel changes here in the Shell British Grand Prix, and a single mistake by a mechanic can cost a driver the race. And of course, the race can be won by a slick and fast pit stop. It's here that the mechanics are under the greatest pressure. From a driver's point of view, however, you've got to get round the first corner on the first lap. There's a lot said about you don't win a race within the first few hundred meters. Well, you certainly can lose it. Paddock Bend here at Brands Hatch is notorious for that. A lot of congestion. John Bisignano's working with us this weekend with ESPN, and right now he's out at Paddock Bend.
I'm standing in the middle of one of the thunder spots of Formula One, and lightning strikes here more than once. Up top, that's the famous Paddock Bend, named because the Formula One paddock used to be behind that grandstand. What's happening? Coming down the main straight, the drivers are in 6th gear, well over 165 miles an hour. Just touch the brake, slam down 1 gear, and enter the bend. Now, this is the only corner I know about in Formula One or any other class of racing where the drivers actually have to drive beyond their limit. The reason why is because it's the quick way to do it. They're coming down the hill, and right at the bottom of the hill, just when the car is about to lose all of its adhesion and actually go off the road, it hits the bottom of that hill, and it can gain a good 400 pounds of downforce, which stops the car's lateral movement. Now, after surviving that, they shoot straight on up this hill into one of the heaviest passing areas of this circuit. It's the 2nd gear hairpin up there. Now, the first lap, you'll see them trying to get there 3 abreast through that corner. But also, all throughout the race, people are going to be dicing for the best passing position out of Druids and the exit down into Bottom Bend and along the back little straightaway.
Thank you, John. After the madness of that first right-hander paddock bend in Druids, there is a short straightaway. Now you move over to the far right-hand side of that straightaway because you have to set up the Surtees corner. A couple of interesting things about Surtees. First of all, it's within sight of many of the spectators along the main straightaway, the main grandstands. The other thing about this, it's uphill. It's almost like going into a high-speed, high-bank paved corner back home in the States. As you go through this turn and move uphill, you can really lean on the accelerator and really lean on the gears as you go up there trying to reach maximum speed. The drivers will all tell you that every racetrack has one turn that leads on to the fastest part of the racetrack, and that makes it the most important. And this is it. This leads on to the long Hawthorne Straight and up toward the Hawthorne Bend. They expect speeds here in excess of 190, maybe 195 miles an hour. Now here's Jackie Stewart bringing us home.
Larry, thank you very much. Well, there has to be an end to every lap, and Clearways Corner is the final corner in a lap at Brands Hatch. Notoriously difficult. A lot of cars have gone off here in the past. They hit a barrier that's protected by tires. There's a gravel pit there to slow them down also. But it's a very fast corner, taken in 5th gear. It's undulating all the way through it and somewhat bumpy, I've always found. A difficult and demanding corner. And of course it's important because it's leading on to the front stretch. Now that stretch is not straight by any means. In fact, it's a gentle curve all the way around to where we started at Paddock Bend. It's also peculiar in that the start-finishing line is along there, but the end of the grid, in fact, will be back here. So the cars right at the back of the grid will have difficulty seeing that start-finishing line, and in fact, they'll have to go around a gentle curve to get to it. That's this lap of Brands Hatch. We'll be back for more after this. This pre-race report has been brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? Welcome back, and of course back here to Brands Hatch. Working with me today at this British Grand Prix is Larry Nuber. Larry, we are at Brands Hatch. Generally, it's only been every second year that we've come here. It flip-flops with Silverstone, which is the site of every other second year of the British Grand Prix, but that's no longer going to continue.
Well, Jackie, FISA has indicated that perhaps they want to discontinue the Formula One racing here at Brands Hatch, and you and I shared a little bit. We both think it's kind of a shame. It's very much of a carnival atmosphere here. Lots of tents and pavilions, lots of concessions to attend for all the spectators. There's a lot of enthusiasm about coming here for a Formula One race. It's very similar to many of the stock car races that I've attended in the South, in the Southeast, in the States, and I think it would be a shame if they discontinued this race.
Well, it is a carnival atmosphere. We have air displays here, we have regimental brass bands, we have an enormously enthusiastic public, and the reason for this cancellation potentially of the British Grand Prix being held at Brands Hatch every second year is that the governing body of motorsport think that for the capital investment required to bring any track up to the high standards that they think will be necessary in the future, clearly only one track can afford to spend that kind of money. So it does look, as we stand here at this time, that we could just be about to see the last Grand Prix of Britain being held at Brands Hatch. Now, it's also been a long time since a British driver has been so prominent in the World Championship. In fact, 10 years since a Brit has won the World Championship.
Well, Nigel Mansell is making things change in a very big way. You know, when we covered this race a year ago, Mansell was a 6-year veteran still looking for his very first ever Formula One win. But my, have things changed. Nigel Mansell is the hands-on favorite to win this race, and you got to say he has the inside track toward that World's Championship.
He's got a very competitive team, a well-financed team. He's won 3 out of the last 4 Grand Prix. And as I say, it's been 10 years since James Hunt won the World Championship in 1976 that we've had a Brit with the potential of winning it. Well, John Bisignano is with that young Brit. He's down there, and we're going to have a word with him right now.
Nigel, you won 3 out of the last 4 Grand Prix, and you're returning to the circuit where you had your first victory. Does that give you an extra bit of security?
Security, not. Maybe a little bit of confidence, but it gets harder because it's a tough act to follow. I mean, winning 3 out of the last 4 is, you know, is quite reasonable. 29 points out of the last 4 races is quite respectable, and it's hard to keep going, but obviously we're pushing all the time.
You were quoted earlier this week and the fact that you aren't really thinking about the championship, but you've just mentioned points and you're only 1 point out of the lead. The World Championship has to be in the back of your mind even this early in the season.
I think what you've got to do is each individual race is worth 9 points. If you win enough races, you win the championship. The championship is only a question of adding the points up, and if you have more points than the next guy, then you win the championship. It's just that we're literally halfway through the season. This is the 9th race. There's 72 points left if someone wins them all. So there's a hell of a long way to go yet. But obviously, yes, we're going to be trying as hard as we can and trying to pick up every point we can.
Thank you, John. Well, on the pole is Nelson Piquet. Alongside him, the British driver Nigel Mansell, a teammate. Third fastest is Ayrton Senna from Brazil, with Gerhard Berger 4th fastest. Then a great team of Keke Rosberg and Alain Prost are side by side, 5th and 6th. Theo Fabi and René Arnoux are 7th and 8th. A British lineup, 9th and 10th, is Derek Warwick in the Brabham, and Johnny Dumfries, teammate to Ayrton Senna, making up the top 10. Martin Brundle, another Brit, is 11th, and Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari way down in 12th fastest. Bad weekend for him so far. Terry Boutsen in the Arrows, 13th. Alan Jones of Australia, 14th. Riccardo Patrese in the other Brabham is 15th. And Streff is back in 16th. Patrick Tambay and Johansson are 17th and 18th. Jacques Lafitte, the oldest driver in the race, 19th. Nannini with him in 20th position. 21st and 22nd is Andrea De Cesaris driving the Minardi, and Jonathan Palmer in the West Zaxby. 23rd and 24th, Christian Danner in the Barclay Arrow, and Genzani is 24th. Rothengat is 25th, and bringing up the rear from Canada, Alan Berg. We'll be right back for the start of the British Grand Prix. The Shell British Grand Prix is being brought to you by BF Goodrich TA radios, built for you to take on the road, and by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Fram, Bendel, Brands Hatch, where the British Grand Prix will be taking place. The start in just a few minutes. The weather has changed for the good. This morning there was around about a 300-foot cloud base here. Helicopter movements were being restricted, and incidentally there are more helicopter movements in and out of this particular event than any other activity in the calendar year in Britain. Bigger than Ascot, bigger than the Derby, bigger than everything. However, that was not to be very comfortable for the helicopters because weather was very poor. No rain, but a heavy cloud. Now, that's burned off, and it's very clear weather, very warm. I'd say it's in its late 70s, early 80s. Ideal racing conditions. So that looks good. Now, you've seen 3 parts of this racetrack already. We've walked you around those 3 areas, but there's a lot more to this track. Very bumpy, quite demanding. A racetrack that I personally never felt all that comfortable with as a race driver. 2.6136 miles around, just in rough measurement. But it's certainly a demanding one. And Larry, one of the things at this racetrack is the extraordinary speed that can be achieved without any real straight.
Yeah, the only real semblance of a straightaway, and I suppose it's a legitimate straightaway, is going down Hawthorne Hill and going into Hawthorne Bend. But the rest of the track is a series of curves going uphill, downhill. And what makes them so fast, Jackie, and for all those back home watching, is that many of the corners are banked. And I commented in that piece that you saw earlier about how much I felt like I was on a high-banked half-mile oval somewhere in the Midwest as you came around Surtees. And the whole track is a series of that. It also brought about some very unusual occurrences. For instance, this week, Alexandre Nannini, who qualified quite modestly, let's be kind to the man, but he was among the top 10 in straightaway speed, an obvious superiority to the performance of the machine on the straightaways, and some of the other drivers who had qualified well, namely the Williams, were not going so fast on the straights themselves. There are 2 speed traps here, one on the main straight and one on that Hawthorne straightaway we were mentioning.
Well, certainly speed is important, aerodynamics are important. Most of the cars are being pressed down onto the racetrack, but right down now on that racetrack in the pit is our man John Bisignano. John, what's happening down there just these few moments before they go in the warm-up?
Jackie, there's been a great deal of activity before the start on the grid. We had Nelson Piquet working on his motor. They changed motors this morning between warm-up and the pace lap. They were also changing the right front brake of Nigel Mansell's car, actually running over to the T car and taking the bit off of the T car to do that right front brake. There have been no less than 7 motor changes from the morning warm-up to the early pace lap. So there's a lot of fresh motors in there that have never done more than 2 or 3 laps.
Well, I think it's probably a good job that those motor changes are taking place just these few hours before the race rather than during the race, because clearly if a mechanical occurrence takes place, it's better to happen at that time. As I said, weather conditions are ideal. As you see the cars driving around there and warming their tires up, you can see that this racetrack has very few corners. A beautiful sort of low-lying racetrack here. It's in a valley, very picturesque, a great sight. We've had a wonderful air display. We've had a fantastic entertainment with regimental brass bands. We've got a record crowd, I would dare to say. They're looking towards 192,000 people here, Larry.
Jackie, I was going to say, it looks like about 200,000 people. It's so difficult to judge because there are a lot of hills where you can sit. There are a lot of permanent stands all the way around this race course. It's also a very festive crowd, Jackie. I have not seen over the last 3 days a racetrack where there were more concessionaires, more models. That's the kind that you put together and assemble that are plastic, not young ladies. More jackets, T-shirts being sold. It was just a marvelous display of support of the sport of automobile racing by the Britons.
Well, of course, Britain's very strong at the present time. Nigel Mansell, attempting to go for a world championship, has won 3 out of the last 4 Grand Prix. As we're looking at the cars coming down to Clearways Corner now. Now, there you see on the left-hand side, incidentally, the medical cars. There's a Cosworth Sierra there. There's a Jaguar, a BMW, filled with doctors in the case of a first-lap incident. As they come around this long right-hand bend where I had explained to everyone prior to this in the warm-up that we had for this show, that it really is a difficult corner. You're coming in from a high level, you go down into a dip, and then you accelerate round this gentle right-hand bend, and you can see the cars getting their final warm-up of tires as they look down from the Goodyear blimp here at the paddock area. That's the motorhomes and the transporters we talked about earlier in the center of the picture, the start grid there. And as I said to you, the start grid is on a curve. Now, the big problem here, as John Bisignano said earlier, is the first corner. Now, we could see a situation, and if there was ever likely to be a red flag thrown at the beginning of a Grand Prix, it would be here at Brands Hatch because of the congestion going around this very fast corner. The cars are now coming to a stop. You will then see on the corner of your screen the light system, red and green. When red goes on, and you see at the left-hand side, any time they can go now, the green light is on. The 2 Williams take away. It looks like Mansell got a slight advantage. It's Piquet and Senna going in there. Mansell had a problem. He didn't get away as quickly as he would. Normally, they're through without any incident.
Boy, Nigel Mansell had just a terrible start, and it's continuing as he goes down towards Druid, and we've had a massive pileup going into turn number 1.
That's a heavy one. There's a heavy one there.
Nigel Mansell, I think, was probably the catalyst to all that. He really was slow getting offline. We have Johnny Dumfries, who is also getting off the course as they come down to the bottom of Graham Hill.
Well, Nigel Mansell's in trouble. You can see Johnny Dumfries going slowly there. Mansell's even behind him. That's the end of his race. And here the driver stepping out of the car. The black flag has been shown. That would suggest that there may be a stop to this race. It's going to be red flagged, I think. The red flag is out. No, it's a white flag. Red flag has been shown. Red flag.
You can see them. One of the Minardi's, one of the Ocellas is there involved in it. There's a Ligier, at least one. Arrows is also a car that I saw. So at least 4 cars, maybe as many as 5, as they were all scurrying to find room to get around.
One driver is trapped. Jacques Lafitte is in the car there. There's his helmet. That's the Ligier. I see the the green helmet of Jacques Lafitte, the Frenchman. The biggest problem, and there's Christian Dana running back. Now, they have stopped this race, thrown the red flag. The cars will now return to the pit.
officially, this race can restart. Now, the technicalities of that with regard to the cars that have been involved and the drivers involved, whether Christian Danner is now running back to try and get to his other car and maybe allowed to restart is another question.
Concern over Jacques.
No, definitely the doctors are now working on the car of
Jonathan
Jacques
Palmer is
Lafitte.
involved. We have not mentioned him yet, Jack. You can see the number 14 car, the Zach Speed machine.
Now, he's a doctor himself, Jonathan Palmer, a qualified doctor. That's the red and white car, you see 14. Then there's the Arrows car, the US F&G car, and then there's the Ligier. And Professor Watkins, who's head of neurosurgery for the London Hospital, is in charge of this. Now, that's De Cesaris, I think, with his helmet still on, walking away. Andrea De Cesaris. This is him walking away, not too speedily.
Well, again, what happened, Jackie, you called it. Nigel had problems right at the line. There's a shot of Christian Danner coming back to the pits, looking toward the possibility of getting a backup car out for him. Nigel had problems getting off the line, and everybody was just scurrying each direction, to the right and to the left, trying to find a way to get around, and it got very crowded, particularly near the back of the pack, as not only were people going both directions, but they were also climbing to 3 and 4 abreast in a very tight yet high-speed turn. There just wasn't enough room.
Both the West Zach Speed cars are out. Kerry Brookson, he may be coming out of his own car, but I see Gonzani walking back from the first corner as well as De Cesaris. Nigel's going over there to see what he can do. He can, of course, potentially restart the backup car. Nigel Mansell there, clearly having his car taken away. Something went wrong with that. He was not involved in the accident. He was involved in creating potentially the accident because of the slowness of his acceleration. This is not a driver problem. It's a wretched problem for a driver because he's left in there with the thought that everybody's going to run into him and hit him. I see young Alan Berg walking back as well, the young Canadian, and I see the police stopping the Gitin mechanics, the Ligier mechanics from going to their car. Now, I just question the sanity of that, if I may just say for a moment. A mechanic knows more about the chassis and the construction of the racing car than anybody else. If he can help get that driver out, it would be an advantage to have him on the site.
They certainly know all the stress points, all the potential places to disassemble a car with the least potential additional injury to a driver.
Well, we hope that you might be able to have a rerun here of the start. The BBC may well have an isolated camera that would have picked all of that up. But as we see the work still being completed to try and get Jacques out of the car. Now, just keep in mind, now these mechanics I talked to you about have now reached Jacques Lafitte. You can see them there, the Ligier mechanics in the white shirt talking to the fellas with the orange overalls on. That's one of the mechanics. Now, the big thing about a car accident in a race car is not to rush to get the driver out. As long as he is breathing clearly and well, and here is a rerun of the start. Look at Nigel Mansell, the right-hand front here. He gets away very well, and suddenly the car gets out of line and goes slowly. Now then there's a pack up behind. There's Nigel on the right-hand side. There's a real traffic jam, but the incident, I think, starts further back. In fact, from Nigel. Nigel is still there.
He goes significantly slower at that moment, just unfortunately as the leaders went out of our screen.
Well, the BBC may not have that replay of that particular impact and the melee that caused, because the first 4 cars, 5 cars got through, 6 cars got, and there's Nigel Mansell actually going through, and you can see there's considerable congestion as the rest of the cars, there was that first gap, and then the congestion of the rest of the cars as they went through.
That was one of the Lotus cars that you saw clipping somebody, but I think that was a result of probably trying to avoid
and here,
that
was the tail end of that accident. But these cars were in fact the last runners in the race, because the car finally at the back of the grid was Berg, and Berg was involved in that incident. Now, it looks like they're getting the driver out right now. It looks maybe they're getting him out of the car. As I said to you earlier, Professor Watkins will be there in controlling the fact of not removing the driver where injury may be precipitated by hurriedly trying to rush him out when there is no concern for his life. Let's be sure that there's no damage being done.
And Jackie, just before the green light came on, we were talking about the emergency people, the safety crew, the doctors who right along behind the start of a Grand Prix race. There's another shot of Nigel, and here is a vivid example of the reason why.
Nigel Mansell, incidentally, is talking to us, looking at us from the garage area, and maybe that they're working on that car, and of course legitimately. So this is a whole new scene here. We'll be stopped for at least 30 minutes before this is allowed to restart. So we'll be back for more of the Shell British Grand Prix, more of an update in just a moment. And giving you live coverage today of the British Grand Prix here at Brands Hatch. You're getting live coverage even with the time delay that you have in the United States, because we are 1.5 hours behind what would have been the start of this event because of an accident that did occur on the very first lap, on the very first corner. What you're looking at now is the warm-up lap leading up to this Grand Prix of Britain. It will be, incidentally, a field, I think, of 21 cars instead of 25 cars. Many of the cars taken out because of that accident that involved Jacques Lafitte being injured severely enough to keep him in the car. He was trapped in it probably for no less than about 40 minutes, and he has been taken to hospital. Is not seriously ill, our reports suggest, but we have the cars continuing round. Working with me is Larry Nuber.
Jackie, again, to recap those out of the race, obviously Jacques Lafitte, Christian Danner, one of the two Barclays Aeros car, was not able to get repaired. Piercarlo Genzani is out, as well as Alan Berg, the young Canadian who got this ride when Christian Danner moved over to the Aeros.
Well, the car that you were looking at a moment ago was the car of Nannini, who's been allowed to start. So there will be 22 runners in this because Nannini is stuck in the pit lane. He will be allowed to continue. And that's part of the starting grid. From the front, you see Piquet, then Mansell, then Senna, then Berger, who's done very well in qualifying, Keke Rosberg, Alain Prost, then followed by Theo Fabi, René Arnoux, Derek Warwick, Dumfries Brundle, and Alboreto.
Keep in mind, Nigel Mansell told us earlier he's in a car he's unfamiliar with. This is not the car he was prepared to run this weekend.
Well, that for a driver is never good. Piquet was my favorite at the beginning of the race. It could well be this could be his race, but we're now waiting for the light to come on when they come under starters' orders. All cars must be stopped, and then on the top left-hand side of your screen, you will see a set of lights, one red, one green. When the red light goes on, it's within 10 seconds. Anytime the flag will drop or the red will go, and it did seem there was again a restart. Look out for this first corner here. It is Piquet, then Mansell. They seem to be clear. They've got through this first corner in shape this time. Berger's very far up. He's in third position right now. Then Senna, then the two Marlboro McLarens. As they steam through Druids, going down to the bottom of the hill, Nelson Piquet with a clear lead. Mansell, Berger, Senna. It's Rosberg, then Prost, then Theo Fabi, then Alboreto in the Ferrari, then René Arnoux as they go around the bottom, getting onto the fastest part of the racetrack. From our Goodyear blimp, we can see them. They'll be reaching speeds of about 190 miles an hour.
And Berger has moved by. Gerhard Berger has moved past Nigel Mansell, the man who's in the car that he's unfamiliar with. He has been, as you know, on a tear in recent weeks. He's won 3 of the last 4 Grand Prix.
Well, that's a one for the book. Berger is really enthusiastic. He's bushy-tailed, bright-eyed. He's the driver of 1986. The Senna was of 85. Berger is of 86. This is the first lap of 75 laps in the British Grand Prix. A delayed start. Capacity crowd here at Brands Hatch. A clean lap so far as they come through clearways. Coming along at about 165, 170 miles an hour. Nelson Piquet. Berger's closed up on him. Mansell's dropped back. Senna's there. And Prost is being threatened by Theo Fabi. Alboreto's there. Alan Jones is well up in the Ford-engine car, the Lola car entered by Carl Haas, the American.
Uphill around Druids, down toward the Graham Hill bend. They're right across from our commentary booth and right behind the pit as they go down what is known as the Cooper Straight. This is still looking at Druids corner, which is basically a horseshoe bend. There's that Graham Hill Straight. They're making the Cooper Straight. They're going to make a left-hander and go uphill, as we showed you before the show. And they're moving on to the fastest section of this racetrack. There it is. They come downhill. It's called Pilgrim's Drop. They reach about 195 miles an hour.
Brands Hatch, a racetrack that doesn't give anybody much peace. And Berger's going to be putting a lot of pressure and not giving much peace to the Brazilian, Piquet. He has dominated practice, has Nelson Piquet. He has been fastest in each of the practice sessions in qualifying. Well, of course, in qualifying, not so much in practice, because this morning, Keke Rosberg on the warm-up was indeed fastest. So the Marlboro McLaren with the tag engine, the one that was developed by Porsche, looks like being very good for the race distance here. Berger and the BMW engine, the Honda presently leading it.
Remember that there is no refueling in a Formula One automobile race. However, the current situation in terms of the science of tires and rubbers has changed this type of racing significantly. Everybody who's running on Goodyear today, Goodyear distributed their morning sweep of the pit, is starting on C's. They're the soft tires, and Goodyear explained to everybody that they felt that one stop for tires was going to be necessary, and the ideal time was probably at 35 laps in the race. And here comes Mansell now beginning to feel his out. He's getting comfortable.
He's done it. He's got Berger. Mansell's come through and past Berger. Berger sort of half closed the door. There was a little curve in that straight there. Now Mansell's trying to get himself psyched into this motor car, to try and keep his tire temperatures down, to try and be able to ease himself in to the character of the car. It's really the backup car that was used by Nelson most of the weekend, so he's not familiar with it. And that's just a question of him now dialing himself in. What he has to be careful of is not to get ourselves too hot on tires. He can't overdrive the car. Now, John Visignano is back in the pit. John, what do you have for it?
Well, I'm actually standing in the Williams pit. Everyone is certainly watching these cars from streaming past her. I was talking to the chief mechanic of the spare car, and he says that they set that car absolutely identical to all the settings that were found most suitable to Nigel Mansell, that there is no way that that spare car can work exactly in the exact same character that Nigel Mansell's race car was. So yes, he is in the same exact setup, gear ratios, wing settings, everything like that, but still the characteristics will never ever be duplicated exactly.
Well, no race car, of course, is identical. You can build them with the same information, the same measurement, but it certainly doesn't work like that. So Nigel Mansell is now closing the gap on Nelson Piquet.
Jackie, based on what we've seen so far in 1986, you got to ask the question, where is Senna? Senna has been the arch rival of this man, Nigel Mansell, all year long. As a matter of fact, Nigel almost has 2 more wins. There is Senna, the black car with the glistening chartreuse. Looks yellow on your pictures behind our helmet. Senna is in 4th position, about 5 seconds behind, and that's nothing to be worried about or concerned about at this early stage of this Grand Prix.
But he is under pressure from Keke Rosberg, one of the most aggressive drivers in the business right now, as you see the first and second cars. Now, Frank Williams, the man who masterminded Nelson Piquet, went through cleanly. Nigel Mansell almost went wide there. Frank Williams was paralyzed about 4.5 months ago. He was here for the last 2 days of qualifying. Now his cars are lying first and second in the British Grand Prix as a British entrant. This must put tears in the eyes of Frank Williams, who's sitting at home watching this on television today. So both these cars leading first and second in this Grand Prix of Britain. You can see the gap there, quite considerable. The sparks flying out of the cars, as we've described before, from the titanium skid pads underneath those cars to stop the car being rubbed away on the road surface. Titanium, of course, very strong, but clearly very light. Pressure for Ayrton Senna, the black car with the yellow helmet, being followed closely by Keke Rosberg, then Alain Prost, then Pio Fabi, then Alboreto, then René Arnoux, then Alan Jones, and then Derek Warwick in the Brabham. Then a bit of a gap to Johnny Dumfries, who you see coming through there, and Martin Brundle just behind him.
I know it's kind of hard when you're watching at home to get an idea of just exactly how the course is laid out. If you think of a large block S, that's basically what this track looks like from an aerial shot. Here as they come along what would be known as the front stretch back in the States, it's actually the straightaway or the curved straightaway that goes by the pits here at Brands Hatch. This is like the bottom of the block S. Now we're going around the lower left-hand leg of that block S. We told you earlier it's Druid. It's the sharpest hairpin on this corner. Now you go follow around the bottom of that block S. We're running parallel to the pits, parallel to the main grandstand. You can see the cars are moving up to what would in effect be the main shank of that large block S. That gives you somewhat of an idea of what the drivers are facing here at Brands Hatch. It's really a beautiful course, and it's an exciting one to watch a motor race at.
the back end of the circuit now. Brands Hatch, we're underway. We've got good racing, and we will be right back after this. Number one driver, as clearly Alain Prost is, there are preferences. You have the best talent in the team with regards to the mechanics. You have the most experienced ones. Of course, they've been with him longer, so therefore they know what he needs. They know his desires. And of course, Alain Prost is very light on a car in any case. That's not saying for 1 minute that Keke's form of driving would have created the kind of problem that he's experiencing today. That does look like an engine malady that took him out. But certainly Alain Prost has had a great mechanical record with this team. The Ron Dennis prepared cars. He is the part owner and runs the operation. He was a mechanic himself, has graduated to be an extremely successful businessman. As of course is Frank Williams, who did a little bit of racing in his day. So Frank, who is the owner of the Williams team and has cars right now leading first and second.
Keke Rosberg, by the way, just for your information, 3 times this year has dropped out with engine problems.
Well, the engine problem certainly can't be a driver's fault. Now, we were having trouble with the audio and John Bisignano's microphone down in the pits, but we look as if we've got that repaired now. It seems to be a lot better. The audio that we've been getting here is not quite first class, but let's hope that continues. John Bisignano, are you down in the pits?
Yes, Jackie, I'm here. It was actually the gearbox that packed up on Keke Rosberg's Marlboro McLaren. Unfortunately, as you see, he is out of the car and will not be returning to the British Grand Prix. Also, the fact that, as you notice, all the back markers, unfortunately, are those people who had to go to spare cars or repair their cars during the break between the second start and the first start. So obviously, like Terry Bouston in the USF&G Aeros, he was qualified 13th, and now he is running 4th to last. Therefore, those settings on the spare car just never could come up to match the speed that the race car had produced during qualifying and practice earlier this week.
Okay, let's run down the top runners for you right now as we look at the Williams leading it. Nelson Piquet is ahead, Nigel Mansell is second, Gerhard Berger is third, Ayrton Senna is lying fourth, Alain Prost is fifth, Theo Fabi is sixth, Alboreto in the Ferrari is seventh, René Arnoux is eighth, Alan Jones is ninth from Australia, Derek Warwick is 10th. Johnny Dumfries is in 11th. Martin. Oh, and that's one of the West cars. Rottengatter pulled off the road there. He had a little excursion, a little agriculture there. As I said, in 12th position is Martin Brundle. 13th, Patrese from Italy, of course, driving the Brabham. And Scrape is 14th in the Data General Tyrrell. Johansson and the Ferraris way back in 15th position. The Ferraris have just been having a wretched year. They're in a terribly and non-competitive set of circumstances. Then Patrick Tamby, uncharacteristically, is back in 16th. Jonathan Palmer is 17th. Then Terry Boutsen, as we said, way back in 18th position. Fastest lap in the meantime has been done by Nelson Piquet in 1:12 seconds, which is about 6 seconds slower than his qualifying time. And that gives us some indication, as I said, back in 19th position is Nannini, and 20th position De Cesaris.
And De Cesaris just, I guess that was Nannini who just went a lap down. Andre had been lapped, a couple laps ago. You know, the trained Formula One observer would have noticed we haven't seen that much of the McLarens today because of the dominance of the Williams, but when we went to them, the characteristic Marlboro was not on the side of those cars. The reason being that here in Great Britain, it's not an edict, but the government says, gee guys, it's TV, and because of all the things that have been going on in the world, all the medical reports, it's voluntary, but we don't really want to see tobacco advertising on the sides of the cars.
It's quite nice that the teams choose to do that, because as you say, it's not absolutely compulsory, although it is compulsory for the next Grand Prix and the one after it, which will be the German Grand Prix and, of course, also the Austrian Grand Prix, where they're not allowed at all to carry any cigarette identification on the vehicle.
And the nice part about it, Jackie, was that everybody followed suit. Nobody went ahead and put their sponsor on the side of the car. They're all in together, the Marlboro people, West, Barclay Arrows, and of course the Giton on the Ligiers. Everybody passed this weekend here in Great Britain.
That's right. The West, Zach Speed is another cigarette company. There you see the car of Gerhard Berger coming along. The Goodyear cars are firmly first and second. Berger is in Pirelli. He's in third position. Theo Fabian 6 is also wearing Pirellis. The rest of the field made up on Goodyear. Berger certainly has excited a lot of people here. BMW announced just 10 days ago that they were withdrawing from Formula One World Championship racing at the end of this year with an engine program. Berger, of course, is one of the drivers that would be affected by this. BMW coming out of it would mean quite a few cars. The Arrows team would be affected also. And it could be that this young man would be moving teams at the end of this season. There's been a lot of speculation in the paddock. The rumor is that Honda are taking over the Lotus team away from Renault, and there's even a suggestion that they are going to buy Lotus Racing. So that would be fairly revolutionary. By doing so, they guarantee themselves the services of Ayrton Senna, the man on the screen right now. He would be going to Honda, along with the chief engineer, Gerard Degarouge, who has been very highly sought of in motor racing. So there's a big development. If Honda can get them, will the Williams team stay with Honda? It does seem right now that it would be silly for Honda not to service such a fantastic team as the Williams, who are clearly leading this race first and second.
And to give you an idea of how strong Senna is, particularly when he traverses the turns on a Formula One race, he was only about 9th or 10th fastest at the two speed traps all weekend long, but consistently, as always, up in the top 3 in qualifying. I really expected, Jackie, this man right here, Ayrton Senna, and Nigel to shoot it out for the #1 qualifying run here this weekend, which was, by the way, a brand new track record. But Nelson made it look easy when he got his quick run yesterday. And by the way, all the top cars except for the number 20 car of Berger went faster on Saturday than Friday. And when Piquet got his hot lap, it was like the 3rd or 4th lap that he went out. He got it very early and kind of sat back like a Cheshire cat and let everybody take shots at it, but nobody could catch him.
The man we're looking at right now is Alain Prost, who's closing on Ayrton Senna. So therefore, that's something we should look at now. He's definitely closing that. So we're going to see a little battle develop in this. We'll be back for that. Terry Boutsen's in the pit. They're taking the engine cowling and the covers off. There's not a great deal of urgency going on there as we flip back onto the leader of this race. It looks like Kerry Bootson's got a problem that can't be fixed immediately, but certainly the solution to this race is in the hands of Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell. Now, this race we're going to see, of course, develop into a pit stop race. It's not just a question of those two drivers going round as they are just now, separated by about 1.9 seconds. What's going to happen is they will not come into the pits at the same time. They will come in about 2 laps apart so that the mechanics can clear away all of the unnecessary clutter from the pit, and then the second car will come in. If the mechanics do one very good job with one against the other, and Alan Prost is in the pit for it looks like a normal wheel change. They've completed about 17 laps right now. You can see the clock running right there. John Bizignano's in the pit, and that was a quick stop, John.
Exactly, Jackie. He's out of the pit, as you can see him accelerating down the escape road there, but still, it's very early to start changing tires. Also, the Williams team is all ready for a tire change. There's 58 laps to go, and if everyone starts changing tires with only the first quarter of the race taking part, you're going to have 2 tire stops for at least the Goodyears. Also, the first Pirelli pit stop took place about 5 laps ago when Fabi came in. On Bootson's car there, they're looking at the turbocharger. He was obviously very slow coming down the main straightaway, never quite had the power that he should have had. So they're looking at the turbo and also the black box or the electric. Jackie Stewart, back to you.
Okay, now that means that we could see easily those 2 pit stops. And of course, Nigel Mansell won the French Grand Prix last weekend with 2 pit stops. He made that decision. Alain Prost stayed out with only 1 pit stop, and of course finished second in the race. It was a sort of tortoise and the hare contest.
Jackie, I'm really surprised to see Alain come in, because the word up and down the pitch was, well, probably 1 pit stop. No, you don't have to go halfway. The tires will sustain it if you so choose, but probably sometime after lap 30, maybe around lap 35. This track, because of all the hills and the turns, the very high-speed turns, it's abrasive to the tires. But everybody had to start on C's or the soft ones, because he needed to have a pretty rapid pace of speed to keep up with everybody all race long. So I am very surprised to see even Prost, although if anybody would come in as early, it would be Alain.
Well, he, of course, is smoother and quieter on tires and on brakes, ironically, than any other driver. It could have been a problem that was the car's handling that he didn't feel was appropriate. It could be that he came in and the quick fix would be tires. He's not going particularly fast on the racetrack right now. He's not catching up everybody who had passed him when he left the pit, so it could be that he's still finding his way on this car with fresh tires. The 2 Williams Honda cars, however, in the meantime are going round pretty much in unison. Berger is giving them a little bit of pressure there, but some way back. He's still staying there. And then, of course, Ayrton Senna is a long way back. We'll give you some gaps in just a few moments to give you some indication of what's happening there. But the 2 Williams is coming through clearly at the present time. They clearly have an advantage on everybody else. But I think it'll be interesting to see what happens now with them if they slacken off the pace.
The scoring computer, Jackie, is showing that Berger is about 17 seconds behind, so that's perhaps an indication that that green car is Teo Fabi, who just has been put a lap down by the 2 leaders. So the 2 Williams cars are really dominating this race. Mansell keeping Piquet in sight. What do you figure is going on there? Do you think that Nigel is kind of pledging allegiance to the team and just riding it out right now, see how this race unfolds, rather than challenge his teammates?
No, I think he very much has the World Championship in his sights right now. Keep in mind he's in front of a very partisan crowd. He's British, and this is the British Grand Prix. And for any Britisher to win his own Grand Prix, this is something that Nigel has not done. Now, before we get loads of phone calls saying he did it last year, the Grand Prix that he won here at Brands Hatch was the European Grand Prix, not the British Grand Prix. And there is another trophy that goes for the British Grand Prix, which everyone loves to be able to put above their head. So Nigel Mansell would love to win this. I don't think team orders are in vogue right now. I think that Nigel is pacing himself accordingly. He's now done the fastest lap, incidentally, which is still in the 1:12-second bracket, just a few hundredths of a second faster than Piquet did earlier.
Which is an indication that perhaps he might have the muscle to get around Nigel, or rather get around Nelson. At least he can catch him, but he's holding back just a tad, just to kind of let things fall where they may for the time being.
This would not not be the time for him to put in extraordinary pressure on anyone. That, of course, is Derek Warwick that you're seeing in your screen right now, followed by the red car. And that is...
Number 28 is Stefan Johansson. Just came down the front stretch here with a big plume of smoke coming out from the back, Jackie. It looks like that Christian Danner's problems, or excuse me, Stefan Johansson's problems as he came down the Brabham Straight here are going to continue with the Ferrari team.
Yes, he's definitely got a problem there. He's definitely got smoke coming out of his car as we look over to our
now
position.
slowing significantly, too.
And that's the car you're looking at right now. And there are the two leaders. And look how close Nigel Mansell is right now. Very tight into Piquet. We could see a pass taking place right now. That would be something for the books. It would then be a question of the car changes themselves, those field changes.
Yeah, that is definitely Fabi, by the way. You can tell by the white helmet. There's one of the Haas teams coming through. It looked like Alain Jones, another white helmet, but everybody is really being put under by these two Williams cars so far in this event.
Well, as I say, it's nice to see a British team doing so well in a British Grand Prix. There are only 5 British drivers in this race. There are 5 French drivers, and there were 6 Italian drivers. Of course, those drivers have been deleted from the accident at the beginning of the race. For those who were not watching, Jacques Lafitte had an accident in the first corner on the first lap. In the meantime, let's go back down to the pits as Stefan Johansson comes in and speaks to John Bisignano.
Well, Stefan Johansson is coming right by my vision here, and it's definitely a great deal of smoke coming out of the back of Stefan Johansson's car. The engine is still revving, and you can see he has switched off the motor. There's a great deal of Ferrari confusion going on with Stefan Johansson's car at the moment. He is out of the car, Stefan Johansson, away from the office early with 53 laps to go. Terry Boutsen in the USF&G Barclay Arrows is back into the race. He did work on the turbo. He was down on Boutsen also, and this is very rare. They were adjusting the suspension both front and rear. The spare car was being terribly troubled with a terrible understeer, both through Paddock, which is not where you want it, and up through Druid. We have a fresh report on Stefan Johansson. It's definitely the engine, and he's out. There was low oil pressure and also some turbo smoke coming out of that car, so double trouble for Stefan Johansson.
Okay, and we can see the race is still hot right here. And in fact, since we were down there, we see that Nigel Mansell seems to have overtaken Nelson Piquet.
Nigel Mansell has moved past his teammate. There's a shot from in-car Martin Brundle's car as one of the Haas Force machines with Alan Jones behind the wheel.
Stefan, it's in fact Streff. It's Philippe Streff who's there, and Nigel Mansell, in front of a British crowd, takes the lead of the British Grand Prix. The on-car camera shot there was that of Streff Tyrrell that has been given that picture. The Director General car getting a great picture as we now see a man in his home crowd, in his home track, leading his own Grand Prix. And incidentally, while all that was going on, Alain Jones pulled off the track down at the bottom of Graham Hill Bend, got out of the car, so his car seems to have terminated for the day.
Nigel Mansell, who just a year ago, less than a year ago, was struggling, agonizing, trying to eke out, find some way of getting over the hurdle, which was primarily a hurdle of misfortune, to get his first ever Formula One Grand Prix win. And now they seem to be coming in droves, in flocks. Nigel Mansell has won 3 of the last 4, remember. He came into this race, the odds-on favorite. He gets into a backup car. He minds his P's and Q's for a couple of laps. He almost loses sight of his leader, his teammate, Nelson Piquet, and now he suddenly looks like the man to beat.
This could be history coming back, because James Hunt did a very similar thing in 1976 at this very same racetrack for the British Grand Prix. He had a first lap incident at the same corner, Paddock Bend, the first corner, and what happened? His car went back to the garage area, was heavily worked on. He came back out and he won the race. Not only that, went on to win the World Championship, so we could hear something of a crystal ball.
But was it not 2 years ago at Detroit when Piquet was involved in a opening shunt at the start of the race, jumped in the backup car and came back and he won? So both of them have shown the ability and the experience to do this sort of thing.
They certainly have, and we see a little bit of traffic here. Martin Brundle in the Director General car, the middle of a sandwich right now. And and in fact Nelson Piquet trying to squeeze past him as Mansell has gone through. We're at Brands Hatch, British Grand Prix. We'll be right back after this. And we're back at Brands Hatch. Since we left, Berger has gone out. Gerhard Berger and the BMW engine Benetton is out. He's walking back. And Viquezer has pulled off the racetrack also. He's out of his car. He's out of it. And, of course, just before then, Stefan Johansson went into the pit. Our leader, however, has not changed. That car being driven by Nigel Mansell. A little battle going on there in the back end with the Brabham. And that car in your picture is Alan Prost behind that Brabham. He's not doing all that well today. He's way back at the present time in 8th position. That's not where he normally is. So that's not too good for him.
But remember, he has made one pit stop, and it remains to be seen whether or not that'll be enough. We don't think so. It seems like the stop was much too early to have only one stop in this race, but if everybody else goes on one stop, you got to figure that Alain is certainly capable of going on one stop. By the way, little footnote about Berger. It's the 4th race, Jackie, in a row he's dropped out of. It's been a variety of problems. The 3 previous did not finish it. A turbo, electrics, and gears. So despite all the speed that Berger has been showing throughout the 1986 season, it seems to be going away here. That's 4 races in a row he's dropped out. And when De Cesaris dropped out, keep this in mind, no Minardi or Noah Sella has finished one race yet this year.
I'm afraid a lot of that has to do with budget. Money talks, and some of those smaller teams, quite frankly, just can't keep it together financially. Alain Prost is not making any advances on these 2 Brabham cars as we see the leaderboard. Mansell, Piquet, Senna. Now keep in mind, look out for him. The World Championship's at stake here. He's high. Alboretta's been uncompetitive all weekend. He's
What
up
a very good day.
Yes, right now, through attrition. It's not a fair indication of the performance. Lenny Arnoux and then Derek Warwick there. And it was Warwick that we saw in the picture just right now. The 2 Brabhams in the picture there are totally different. One is the low Brabham, the very new one, and then the higher. And there's Senna in the pit. In the pit. You see the horseshoes on there? These are the victories of that car. Lotus have always done this. John, can you see this pit stop over?
Yes, it's happening just down the road from other Lotus mechanics being very quick. They have a problem. The Lotus mechanics definitely have a problem on that right rear, it looks like. It's a very long stop. They're all looking at it. It could be a cross thread. Everything seemed to be going very well. Ayrton Senna does not like to sit in the pits for up to 25 seconds. His Brazilian temper has to be taking a bit of effect. Now his chief engineer is actually kneeling down next to the car. When the car came in the pits, it did not look like it had any other problem. They're working on the back of the car. We will get an exact report of what went wrong. Back to you, Jackie.
Well, he's got it up in the jack now. It looks like it's transmission. It looks like it's the gearbox they're looking at. They're fiddling with the gear linkage itself. Ayrton Senna, not pleased. We can see Bob Dance, the chief mechanic, working around there. He's a man who's been in racing since 1960. Man of great experience. Mechanics for Clark and Hill, and Stewart, Jock and Brent, all sorts.
By the way, Ayrton Senna's Lotus has dropped out of only one race this year because of mechanical problems. He crashed one time. Matter of fact, the last race in France, which kept him from the finishing position. But every other race, he's finished in the top 5, only one MD.
And, of course, he's only 2 points away from the World Championship lead, so that's something that affects him. It does, however, affect Alain Prost that he is still in the pits because Prost is looking for World Championship points because he's the leader in the World Championship right now with 39 points. It is very important for him to pick up points. He's 1 position away from any points, but he's dropping back on those 2 Brabhams. Alain Prost in trouble.
It's a Prost and a Mansell race at this point as far as the World Championship go. You know, Jackie, I wonder, do you suppose, and it's certainly within his bag of tricks if he so chooses, he's planning on only 1 pit stop, and to stretch this to only 1 pit stop, that means he's got to hold back right now and not use up that machine.
No, he's going too slowly for that. He's off the pace by such a large margin. I don't think he could afford to do that. I think the other cars could come in for more than 1 pit stop, but remember, they have not yet been in the two Williams cars, so I think you will see the Williams only doing 1 pit stop, because we're now in about 30 laps through this 75-lap race, and we certainly are not seeing them coming into the pit. Although the pit, I'm looking down from our commentary position, are always ready. That's Nigel Mansell in our picture right now. Going past one of the West Zaxby cars, being closely followed by Nelson Piquet, trying to find a way past.
Only one of the Benetton cars, Alain Prost, and Senna have been into the pits, and of course we've seen that Ayrton is stuck in the pits and no problem.
And then Driver on the back rear tire. Cars up very high RPM. Okay, all out of the pit. Streaming out of the pit. Right rubber all the way down the exit of the pit. And they're setting up for Nigel Mansell's pit stop. Should be another 2 or 3 laps. So 9.04 seconds was the time for Nelson Piquet's mechanics to have performed those 4 wheels to be changed. That doesn't take into account, of course, the entry to the pit and, of course, the exit. So now we will wait with patience to see when Nigel Mansell will come in, what sort of pit stop he will have. It's all a question of how quickly you can get into the pit, how quickly you can get out, irrespective of how good your mechanics do on time.
Remember in Spain when they were trying to get Nigel Mansell to come in as the car's performance was going down right there as Nigel, you see the British Union Jack over his pit board saying time to come in. They could not get Nigel to come in when they wanted. Because he stayed out there for 2 or 3 laps as the tire was going down, it cost him the race. So hopefully Nigel's going to check in with that pit board, see what they're ready, that they are ready for him, and he'll be in the next time around.
Well, he can't afford to go slowly on this lap. Incidentally, one of the Brabhams has just gone very slowly indeed. I'm looking at Riccardo Patresi's car has suddenly slowed dramatically. Alan Prost came up, found time to pass that as we look through our commentary position. But there is the car of Martin Brundle in the pits. He's having a wheel change. It is a general car. Brundle, a young British driver, in his final year of contract with Ken Tyrrell. John Bisignano, are you down there?
I'm here, Jackie. Ayrton Senna has just left the pit. When he came in for the pit stop, they were changing all 4 tires, and the gear lever linkage came off the back of the gearbox by the rear jack. So they quickly solved that problem, and Ayrton Senna, after losing several laps, is back on the racetrack.
Okay, so Senna's out, but seriously out of contention. He's dropped way back in the field. I mean, he's so far back now, he's not on the leaderboard by any means. But look, we're waiting for this man coming into the pit. John, you be ready for this too, because he's heading down pit lane right now. Have you got it, John?
I've got it. He's coming in. There was a tremendous release of power last time when Nelson came out of here. We'll see. Here he is, Nigel Mansell. Again, very high RPMs on this Honda. Keeping the engine going is one of the biggest responsibilities a driver has during the pit stop. He's trying to... And he's away, spraying us with dirt and dust and rocks and rubber. Nigel Mansell, very quick pit stop. How fast was it, Jackie?
It was a little slower. It was 9.57 seconds. Not to engage gear quite as quickly as he should have done. The car was off the jack, in fact, and he was not just on the button immediately. The driver perhaps lost a fraction.
He came out in front of Nelson somehow, though, Jackie.
But he managed to do it. That's pretty impressive for young Mr. Mansell. The crowd will love that.
Jack, and look, we've got a side-by-side duel between teammates for the lead. They're both on relatively, no, that's more than relatively, it's fresh rubber going up to the number 1 position. Jackie, the one thing that shows up is the entry and exit speed. That also is a part of these pit stops, which heretofore historically has never been tracked on TV. How long it takes you to get in, how long it takes you to get out. Not just how much time are you stopped, because that is the traditional way of timing a pit stop. How long is the car stopped in the pits? But that is certainly not the whole story. You saw it graphically there.
Well, that was certainly a good story we had from John Bisignano. John, you're down there again. You have something else for us?
Yes, if I can survive these pit stops down here. Patrese actually driving last year's Brabham, the Brabham Type 54, not the 55, the low car, in the pits for an extended pit stop again, working on the back of the gearbox. Brands Hatch has more corners than it does straightaways. It looks like these gearboxes are taking one heck of a beating.
Just while you were there, John, there was a real battle going on there. Nelson Piquet is making a serious move on Nigel Mansell. Keep in mind, Mansell had cold tires, although they're preheated, and the sophistication of Grand Prix racing is such now that they actually preheat those tires before they're fitted. So therefore, although he was on fresh and new tires, they were not stone cold tires. But certainly Nelson Piquet made a serious stretch to pass. As we looked down from the Goodyear blimp, I thought he was going to make it, but in fact, Nigel very gently sort of said, "Ferme la porte," just close the door a little bit, my young man. I'm in front of my crowd in my country, so we saw you in Brazil. But look at that move again as Nigel gets round. One of the Arrows cars puts himself a little bit ahead of Terry Boutsen, but gives, look at this. Just look at that little advantage. And there, I'm afraid, the car of Ayrton Senna is being wheeled away. That is Ayrton Senna's car. Obviously, the gearbox linkage was more than something that could be repaired quickly. Now, that in the World Championship, he was only 3 points behind Alain Prost, who was leading the championship, and 2 points behind Nigel Mansell, who was lying in second place. So that could be a serious threat to the championship. Of course, Nelson Piquet right now is lying fourth in the World Championship with only 23 points against Alain Prost, who's got 39. But a couple of wins could mean a lot. Live with ESPN at the British Grand Prix. You can see the leaderboard, and we'll be coming back for a lot more racing. This is Jackie Stewart along with Larry Nuber and John Bisignano at the British Grand Prix, as we recognize that Nelson Piquet now has taken the fastest lap, breaking into the 1 minute 11 second bracket. He's lying in second place behind his teammate, who is Nigel Mansell, the man on the screen right now. We've got a lot of motor racing coming up here on ESPN. We've got the Kart Molten Indy race in Toronto. This is live on Sunday, July 20th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 10:30, of course, in Pacific Time. The site, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. This is a road course. This is the inaugural kart event in Toronto's 1.78-mile road course. This should be an extremely exciting development. Kart goes international, goes up to Canada. There was, of course, a race there last year where, in fact, Rick Mears took rather a bad injury to his leg. But we've got close motor racing going on a long distance away, about 3,500 miles right now. We are live with ESPN. Nigel Mansell looks at amazing crowd that has turned out here at Brands Hatch for a British driver.
Jackie, that race next week at Toronto, Bob James and I and Jack Arute will be up there. We're looking very forward to it because it's very close to the city, and the city is a part of the action, but we understand that the course has been very well laid out, and so it won't be, we are told, your typical race to the streets of a major city. So looking forward there. Of course, Rick Mears being injured at San Air, that little 0.8 of a mile racetrack, a little triangle like the miniature Pocono last year, or 2 years ago, and Rick completely recovered now.
Well, yes, indeed he has. He's come back and racing very strong. Racing drivers do suffer injuries that simply don't exist in other forms of sport, whether you're a tennis player or a golf player or even a boxer, although injuries to the boxing for tennis can be very serious. Motor racing has this amazing ability for drivers to come back after horrific accidents. Rick Mears certainly achieved that. Niki Lauda has in the past in Grand Prix racing.
Very interesting moment here. Nelson Piquet running in second right now, the former world champion. He was the fastest driver, the fastest car driver combination all weekend long. He was the only driver to average over 140 miles an hour during qualifying, and the only one who got below 1 minute 7 seconds. As we look at Johnny Dumfries, no, this is not Ayrton Senna, as Jackie regrettably had to report to you a couple laps ago. Ayrton Senna has dropped out of this race, but Dumfries remains in. But Nelson Piquet having a hard time, having an impossible time, at least at this moment, catching his teammate Nigel Mansell, and you just wouldn't have expected it with Nigel jumping into this car, having not driven it except for some brief moments earlier this weekend.
Well, of course, the adrenaline pumps, and that's something that we all look towards in motor racing. John Bisignano, you're down in the pits again.
Still surviving the pit lane here, Jackie. While we have a little bit of break in the pit stop, Berger is out due to engine. Rottengatter out due to engine, and as you said earlier, Senna is out due to gearbox. Now, we also had the second motor for Johnny Dumfries in and out of the pits very quickly for a routine tire stop. I have just talked to Chief Mechanic Donovan, someone you know very well, Jackie, of the Williams team, and when we have both the Williams cars actually racing one another, I posed the question to him, can these two drivers race flat out with one another? Are there any team instructions? He said definitely no team instructions. Frank Williams gave the word yesterday that they are to race as hard and as cleanly and as difficultly with one another as they can. So it's going to be a real battle for team superiority between both the Williams drivers.
Okay, so the Williams driver's running there, not under team orders at all, absolutely on it. As we look at René Arnoux, the teammate of Jacques Lafitte, who was injured in this first lap accident. If you've just joined this telecast, we had an incident on the very first lap on the first corner. Jacques Lafitte was taken away to hospital with both his legs broken, but he is not in critical condition or serious. They say that he is conscious, and that's all good news, and we wish him a speedy recovery. This was his 176th Grand Prix start, a record to join Graham Hill with the same number, equaling the Graham Hill record. And of course that race for him only was to last for a few hundred yards. So Nigel Mansell and the gap with him to René Arnoux, who at the present time is in third position, a considerable distance as you saw. But Alain Prost, incidentally, with all of those flush of pit stops, has now found himself in fourth position. Now that's a very important element for Alain Prost in the World Championship gamble, because he has been in the pits very early. He may be required to make a second pit stop for tires. If that be the case, clearly it's going to affect him as Arnoux now comes into the pit. René Arnoux driving the Ligier. A lot of Frenchmen around there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 mechanics I can count doing that job.
No 5 over the wall in Europe.
Oh, we can eat it over here.
It's been somewhat of a renaissance year for René Arnoux. He's been a regular 4th, 5th, and 6th place competitor. He hasn't had that moment where he's really broken the bubble and gotten into the top 1 or 2, although at Detroit, he, along with his teammate in the middle of pit stop, Jacques Lafitte and René, were able to lead for quite a number of laps. He is one of only 6 people, as a matter of fact, I believe, Jackie, who has led Formula Ones this year.
Yes, very competitive man. I just looked down. The gap between Nigel Mansell right now and his teammate Piquet is 1.1 second. As we look at the tailgate of Alain Prost trying to eat up Streff, who has a camera on board. The slow part down into second gear around there as they accelerate hard away towards clear ways. Prost looking for a way to get past Streff. Streff driving the Renault power plant. Prost will probably get him in the next straight past the pit. But Prost does not seem to get through these corners too fast. I think he's got a handling problem. I think Alain Prost is being very gentle. He can't even get past Streff there, and Streff really allows that door to remain open.
Yeah.
That was a relatively dangerous set of circumstances there. Alain Prost allowed that to take place under, I would have said, precarious circumstances. Well, Alain Prost continues his merry way around this 2.6-mile racetrack. A Ferrari looks like it's going a little slowly, but we'll be back. Along with Gary Nuber and John Bisignano here, giving you live coverage by courtesy of ESPN of the Shell British Grand Prix. The man in the center of your picture is still the leader. That be Nigel Mansell. He's opened up a considerable gap on his teammate, and that, of course, is Nelson Piquet. He did that in traffic. He maybe was able to just take that advantage. We'll see if, in fact, Piquet can close up. He's opened a 1.82-second gap, which will be interesting to see what Piquet makes of that. This will give us an indication of how Piquet can respond if necessary, because the closing laps of this 75-lap race could be extremely exciting. There, 1.9 seconds was the difference, and that's René Arnoux that now comes up to be lapped yet again. He has, in fact, been lapped once, and this will be the second time he'll be lapped. René Arnoux is in 4th position right now behind Alain Prost, and he gets through. Nigel Mansell gets through again, leaving René Arnoux, who is the gentleman, and he moves right over to allow Piquet through. Now that will have helped Piquet, because Nigel certainly was slowed a fraction by Arnoux, and there you can see on the racetrack, I don't think Nelson has caught up much.
But it wasn't selective editing on behalf of René. It just that Nigel approached him at the wrong moment, and it just didn't work to his advantage. To give you an idea of how much Nigel Mansell has dominated the 1986 Formula One season, coming into today, he had led more laps than anyone else, 175. The driver who had led the second highest total was Alain Prost at 123. Nelson Piquet was third at 103. Ayrton Senna was fourth with 79, and there were 4 other drivers who had led just a few laps. Only those 4, as they have dominated the points, have dominated laps led.
Nigel Mansell may be leading this race, but the car in the center of that picture is Martin Brundle. He is catching Derek Warwick. In fact, he has passed Derek Warwick, and that is, in fact, a pretty impressive thing. That brings him up into 5th position, which is 2 World Championship points. Again, a driver in front of his own British crowd. Martin Brundle comes from Norfolk, the son of a garage owner in Norfolk. He came to my Jackie Stewart Celebrity Challenge trap shooting event that will be covered later this year on ESPN, an event that we had the royal family compete in, along with Nigel Mansell and Martin Brundle, along with Sean Connery and Anthony Andrews and some great sports names, as well as entertainers, some rock and rollers. And Nigel and Martin adapted themselves, as one would expect as good sportsmen, very easily to a new sport that really was foreign to them both. Nigel Mansell still leads this race. Nelson Piquet is still behind, but is not able to respond quite as easily as I expected him to respond. So we could see something here that Nigel could open a little more comfortable a gap.
Brundle, of course, running for the team Tyrrell that Danny Sullivan, who made some fame in the United States of America not only in 1985, but in recent weeks. He's been on a tear in the Indianapolis car circuit. This is the team that Danny Sullivan last raced for when he ran Formula One. Martin Brundle, for those of you who are also followers of racing across the Atlantic over in the States, he gives me the feeling that to look at him, it's like looking at one of those Midwest sprint car drivers. You know how many of those younger drivers have come to the ranks in the Midwest, run sprint cars, short, compact, built maybe like a high school running back, has that gait of masculinity. That's what Martin Brundle struck me as. He exudes confidence as he walks to the pits, and he made a big splash when he first came to Formula One racing in the last couple of years, and I think he's certainly a driver to keep your eye on in the future. There's some real potential there.
Well, he, of course, was one of the men driving against Ayrton Senna when Ayrton Senna was in Formula 3. They both raced in the same year. Martin has been overshadowed since, of course, by Senna going to Lotus in a very hotly competitive car, whereas Martin hasn't quite had that good fortune. But nevertheless, we can expect things, hopefully, in the future from yet another British driver. The British driver who's flying the flag most proudly at the present time is clearly Mansell. It's always interesting to note that the Williams team always have a Union Jack and the Japanese flag flying when they come to any racetrack, and at the end of the race you will see that. The Union Jack is up there, and I'm looking down the pits now, and I can see also the Japanese flag flying, clearly to benefit the Honda engine.
Jack, we talked earlier about Jacques Lafitte tying Graham Hill for the most number of starts career. Just to give you an idea how some of the veterans are faring, we've talked about Brundle and Senna as 2 of the younger drivers in the Grand Prix circuit. The top 10, by the way, in terms of number of starts behind Lafitte. But Tracy, Piquet, interestingly enough, with 120 starts as of today. Alain Jones, the late Elio De Angelis had started 108 Grand Prix. Patrick Tambay, Keke Rosberg, René Arnoux, Alain Prost, and Eddie Cheever. And everybody, with the exception of those last 2, has now crept over 100 career starts.
Now, am I assuming then that Alain Prost is on his 99th Grand Prix this one?
Yes.
That's interesting, because my record of 27 Grand Prix victories came from 99 races. Now, here is Alain. Well, that's one record he ain't going to beat, unless something very strange happens. Of course, he can't do it any longer, because this will be his 99th event, and I think he has now won 23, is it? 23 Grand Prix victories, so I'm safe on my batting average.
4 FY. Oh, on your batting average. Okay, I'll accept that.
I don't know what he'll do or when he'll be able to beat the 27 victories, but that sure will come from Alain Prost. We'll be back for more in a moment. You're looking at live coverage of the British Grand Prix held right today on this very moment. Nigel Mansell of Britain is leading the British Grand Prix with only 10 laps to go. Actually, only about 9.5 laps to go in this 75-lap race. Nelson Piquet is in second place. For more information on what's happening or what has occurred down in pit lane, John Bisignano.
There's a great exchange of money going down on pit lane here in the Williams pit. There is a great amount of competition between mechanics
that work on the separate cars, and there have been bets going back and forth on what is going on the track. 10 laps to go, as you say. Who is going to take the last 5 laps? Who is going to win this race? The mechanics of Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet have exchanged well over 100 pounds here in the last 30 seconds, and it's getting hot and heavy betting down here. The atmosphere is that they're holding back for the last 5 laps, and then are going to have a real go for it. So don't go away, because the last 5 laps, these two drivers are going to close in on one another, at least do everything they can for Nelson Piquet to close in on the leader. And the mechanics have definitely bet their salary for next week on the results. We'll have to see who comes out the winner. Okay, so mechanics knows best, I always say. They're the men who are the real pros in this business, and I think that it'll be interesting. Great competition between them, because although they're in the same team, there are jealousies, there's no doubt about it. One mechanic will be a driver's man. Clearly they have a different set of mechanics. The Williams team have about 100 people in their staff in total. Some of them, of course, never come to Grand Prix. The others who travel around, there's about a 30-man team would come to Brands Hatch, although, of course, there'll be a few more people coming since it's a local event. Let's just run through the leaderboard right now. You've got Mansell leading, then Piquet second. Alain Prost, that perennial finisher in the first 3, is up there in 3rd position. René Arnoux is 4th. Derek Warwick, the Brit, driving the Brabham, is 5th. Martin Brundle up there at the moment with a World Championship point is 6th. And then Streff, his own teammate in the Data General car, is 7th. Johnny Dumfries is 8th. Jonathan Palmer, the good doctor, is 9th. And Patrick Tambay, unfortunately, we saw having a lot of trouble in the pit. I don't know whether Patrick Tambay got back out or not, but we know he did not get back out. So Patrick Tambay on the Ford engine car is in trouble and had a mechanical disarrangement.
And Jackie, somebody else that I noticed is back out, we thought he was out of the race, is Terry Boutsen. And we'd like to mention that because today is Terry's birthday. It's also his 50th Grand Prix start of his career. So Terry Boutsen arriving at a couple of landmarks here today, and also getting back out to finish this race here at the end. And with all the attrition that we've had, you never know. It might hold him in pretty good stead. He may end up with a top 10 finish yet.
Well, as they come to the end of this straight, let's go back down to the pits and see what John has to say. As you said, Jackie, it is the end of the day for the Ford-powered car of Patrick Tambay, the American entry from Carl Haas based in the Chicago area. Actually, it was because of the Ford Turbo, unfortunately. There was a malfunction in the turbocharger itself that they tried to continue at decreased speed, but decided that he should call it a day and not endanger the people around him by going slower than normal. Now, you're very right in the fact that the Barkley Aero car has been circulating for some time, but as we all know, Terry Boutsen is not currently listed on our Olivetti Longines computer. He is certainly several laps down, but still he should be listed. There could be some sort of a malfunction in his bending unit, but I would have to put him in 10th place behind Dr. Jonathan Palmer in the West back here.
Okay, so as we continue, we're coming up with only 6 laps to go. At the completion of this lap, it will be 6 laps to go for Nigel Mansell, getting close to the end. If there's going to be any pressure put on by Piquet, it's going to come in next 2 or 3 laps, because he has to get into a position to pass. As we look at Nannini walking back there, that is Alex Nannini there, young Italian, showing a lot of talent and a lot of natural ability, not being able to show it too much today.
Yeah, Jackie, I'm hearing that down in the Formula One pits. Everybody seems to be reasonably impressed with Nannini. We talked about his straightaway speeds at the earlier part of the show today, about how well he was performing in all the speed traps. Our feeling was that perhaps the Minardi car is lacking a bit of a downforce problem, particularly in the turn. But Alexander Nannini is another name to at least keep, let's call it, on the back of your tongue, if not necessarily in the tip of your tongue, for the future in Formula One.
Well, we need another Italian driver to be up there. It's interesting that Nigel Mansell has yet again beaten the fastest lap, getting down to a 1 minute 9 second. While we watch him go round here, and Piquet trying to find a way past the good Dr. Jonathan Palmer, and Piquet has to keep very close to Mansell now if he's going to do anything about it at all. The cars out of the race is Keke Rosberg, Stefan Johansson, Alan Jones, Berger is out, Ikezere, Senna is out, Rosengard is out, Patrese is out, Fabi is out. We've only got
5 laps to go. Alboreto is out, Nannini is out, Camby is out, and Buxton is circulating, but really far enough off the pace that it doesn't happen anymore. And of course, that's not counting Jacques Lafitte and the other drivers who went out in that first lap accident who were unable to start. But I'm looking at the restart, that is, I'm looking down at the crowd here. There's the odd Union Jack beginning to fly, waving at Nigel Mansell, willing him on with only 5 laps to go.
Yeah, our estimation of 200,000 people, and they are beginning to press ever closer to the fences. Everybody is standing, even though it's not been a wheel-to-wheel tussle for the first place. Everybody is going to be very excited should Nigel Mansell win this race. Nigel Mansell continues to dominate here, with the possible exception of not being able to dominate, but he's able to turn back the challenges of his teammate, that man right there, Nelson Piquet. Think what would have happened if Nigel Mansell had not been knocked out on the first lap of Brazil. Think what would have happened if Nigel Mansell had pitted at the right time for tires at the Spanish Grand Prix. Think what would have happened had Nigel Mansell not had a brake problem at Detroit. There's a possibility, Jackie, that he would have 3 additional wins to what he already has.
Well, you're right, but there are no ifs in motor racing.
Well, I didn't say if. I said think what?
The ifs and the buts don't seem to work.
Yes,
But right now, there's a big question with only 4 laps to go. Can Nigel keep ahead? He's in bottom straight. He has opened up a gap on Piquet. The fuel consumption. This is the time when the driver really is beginning to have, if he's going to have a dual ulcer go wrong, it'll be right now, because he'll be thinking about what's going to break. Are there vibrations? Are the tires okay? Do I have enough fuel in there? Is the readout on the dashboard or the instrument panel giving me an accurate reading? Are the electronics correct? Because that is important. And now he gets past it. He's got to be careful not to get any contact with any other driver. That's imperative as he puts a lap right on there in Martin Brundle. So he really has a clear track ahead of him now. Martin Brundle is between he and Piquet has definitely dropped back. Piquet, I think, has settled for second place, Larry Newbert.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jackie. It just seems like that no matter how hard Nelson pushed, those leg muscles would just not get him to the top of the hill. Every time it seemed like he was beginning to mount a charge or think about mounting a charge, Nigel would crank off another hot lap, and as we told you just a few laps ago, lap 65 or 68, I guess it was, Nigel turned in the fastest lap of the race. Astounding when you think that he changed tires about 25 laps ago. Theoretically, he shouldn't really be able to go that fast right now. And Jackie, the other thing that's amazing me is there are only 9 cars on this track, but Nigel and Nelson are going around so quickly. I'd say that he's performing what they're asking. They're going around so quickly, Jackie, that it seems like there's a lot of traffic out there because they keep encountering cars.
Well, just to give you an indication of that, he's about to lap Warwick for the 3rd time. He's just done that. Nigel is lapping the car in 5th position for the 3rd time. He's going to lap probably Alain Prost for the 2nd time. This gives you some indication. He's already done that to Arnoux. It's amazing that the pace of those cars with the reliability. A great credit to the Williams team. A great credit to the masterminding of Frank Williams at home now, paralyzed, quadriplegic, only movement from his shoulders, with only 2 laps to go. Nigel Mansell and his team of mechanics, his administration, the Piquet car and his team with administration has been able to do this when the leader has been laid up in hospital. That there you see the leaderboard. Mansell, Piquet, Prost, Arnoux, Warwick and Brundle. That's the top 6 in the World Championship standings for this race. Brundle picking up 1 championship point. Fastest lap was in 9 seconds in lap 69. And the gap has definitely widened. I think the Brazilian is going to let Nigel Mansell run the gauntlet here. It could be, of course, that fuel is an issue, and Nelson Piquet is backing off in the hope that a few splutters from the Mansell car could affect him and therefore allow him to pick it up. But look at the gap that Nigel has.
I think Jackie told you earlier, we were talking about Frank Williams. He was here at the racetrack, and by the way, again, for our American audience, did see Corrado Fabi this weekend. No, he is not racing. He is, as we look at the Williams pits getting ready to hoist the flag, Corrado Fabi does not plan on running anymore, but he was here looking around. And also, Jackie, after that first lap, kind of brings up the question, if we're going to have a replacement driver for Jacques Lafitte, Are we looking at Eddie Cheever, do you think?
I think we are. We're looking at Eddie Cheever, but look at right now, we're looking in the last lap. Look at the crowd there. They're waving Nigel Mansell on in this final lap of this British Grand Prix. The Union Jacks, as we look down, are being waved. You can actually hear the crowd cheering. This is a very partisan crowd, an amazing amount of emotion going out of it. The driver had a problem in that first lap of the race. It did cause a problem that maybe he could have dropped out of. He's in a spare car. He's not in his race car. He's really performing with tremendous ability. My hat off to Nigel Mansell. He's really proving that he's coming of age. Look at the crowd there as we follow them round here, cheering him all the way.
The question is, can the English outdo the Brazilians? Remember when Nelson Piquet won the opening race? It was one of the most dramatic and emotional moments I've ever seen in all my years of covering racing. Can the Britons come that close? Well, they're cheering. It's definite.
Well, they're never going to come that close. We're British, remember? But there's the Union Jack. And there is Nigel Mansell. Raised hand. Can he manage two hands as he goes up Druids Hill?
Well,
Maybe not this time.
A lot of race drivers hoist gestures of strength after they win. But Nigel's was as strong as I have seen in quite some time. And he's taken from time to time criticism on this Formula One circuit. We have one of the Brabrams coasting across the finish line, trying to complete. I guess it's Warwick that's got to be in there. And Derek gets across the finish line, but he might have lost the position out of it, Jackie.
I think he may well have lost the position. We're not sure about that. It depends where they all are. We'll have to wait and see that. The jury is out on that one right now. He may have done. But look, Nigel Mansell has been brought in. The car will be scrutinized now. It will be weighed. They'll check the amount of fuel in the car. They'll make sure it's legal with engine capacity and so forth. Alan Prost continues round this racetrack. Nelson Piquet has clearly finished second. Alan Prost is about to take the finishing flag for finishing third. Rennie Arnoux will be fourth. Derek Warwick will have to go out and wait and see about that. Then should be Martin Brundle, Fred Dumfries and Palmer. And there we have it. Nigel Mansell getting out his race car to be congratulated by officials only at this time. We'll be coming back to seeing a little more celebration after this. We're back live as you see a jubilant Nigel Mansell being driven around with a crowd absolutely cheering for him. He hasn't even seen his mechanics yet. He's been driven around the track from the scrutineering area, the technical area. So that's what's happening right here now. John Bisignano is down in the pits listening to all that cheering, John.
Well, it's an electric atmosphere down here. The photographers and Porsche fans, Nigel Mansell here in England. The cheer goes up the main grandstand as he comes by. Everyone is very, very happy for Nigel. He's done such an excellent job in his home crowd. Even though there was an exchange of money down here between the Williams mechanics, everyone is very, very jubilant, very proud. Four wins in the last 5 races, and the next 3 events are considered Honda Strong Power Williams chassis type races: Germany, Austria, and Monza, and possibly Hungary. No one knows because no one's raced there. Back to you, Jackie and Larry.
Thank you very much. As we see Nigel walking unsteadily back actually to get up into the rostrum. Let's go through the winning top 9 here of finishers. Nigel Mansell wins the Shell British Grand Prix. Nelson Piquet was second. Alain Prost was third. Rennie Arnoux finished fourth. Martin Brundle finished fifth. Sixth was Stretch, his own teammate. Then Johnny Dumfries. Poor Derek Warwick looked like he ran out of petrol. That was a problem. He had to stoke it. Unfortunately, he finished his 8th. Jonathan Palmer finished his 9th. The fastest lap was achieved by Nigel Mansell. The World Championship points right now. Mansell takes the lead with 47 points. Alain Prost is second with 43 points. Senna is third with 36 points. Piquet is fourth with 29, quite a long way back. Then comes Rosberg, Lafitte, Arnoux, Johansson. The World Championship Constructors, 76 for Williams. So, this Shell British Grand Prix has been brought to you by BF Goodrich PA Radios, built for you to take on the road. By Budweiser, Beechwood Age for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you. And by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? Well, this is Jackie Stewart along with Larry Nuber and John Bisignano. We have enjoyed a very eventful British Grand Prix. We hope you've enjoyed it on ESPN. We will, of course, be bringing you the German Grand Prix, which is the next round in the World Championship. From all of us here in Brands Hatch, a very good goodbye.